Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to day 4 of the Elite 10. And today is Red Carpet Day. So, sales and marketing, which is what Red Carpet is all about. So, to start off with, welcome. And let's do a very quick unpack of yesterday, because I've got a little bit of a gold tip that I want to give you guys in addition to what we covered yesterday. So yesterday we were talking all about construct. We were talking about how to structure, very briefly, how to structure your book, article, etc., and how to find or how to brain dump and work out what points to include. We talked about if you're doing just a small piece, a small content piece, stick to 1 point. If you're doing maybe an article, 3 points. If you're doing a book, think about if you're going to go shallow and wide or deep and narrow. And here's a little thing that I wanted to add to that as well for you. And this is very much relevant if you're doing, in particular, an article or a book, okay? So anything in particular nonfiction where you're going to have an introduction and a conclusion. And my tip is this. So an article, book, whatever it may be, will typically have an introduction, body, and a conclusion. There's actually a lot more to those 3 parts, but let's just simplify. So introduction, body, conclusion. Here's the thing. The conclusion concludes everything you've written in the body. The introduction introduces everything that you're going to cover and conclude throughout the work. So many people make the mistake of trying to write it in order, doing the introduction, point, conclusion. It doesn't work because you cannot write the introduction until you've done everything else. You cannot write the conclusion until you've written your content. So here's my golden tip. Whatever you're writing, do the body, then do the conclusion, conclude everything, and then from the conclusion, create your introduction. Right? So that's my gold tip with planning out how you're going to actually do your content. All right, excellent. So let's get in today's one, which is red carpet. Now, today we're going to cover 3 areas. We're going to look at a 10-second pitch. We're going to look at also sales and pre-sales. And finally, we're going to look at cover design. And I've got a bit of a bonus tutorial video for you from the program as well. So let's start off. Let's jump straight into the 10-second pitch. Now, the 10-second pitch it's basically answer to this question. Oh, wow, that's awesome. You wrote a book. What's it about? Because when you write a book, that's what you're going to get. When you start writing a book, that's what you're going to get. And let me just point out at this point, you might have noticed we're about to talk about sales and marketing, but we haven't actually talked about writing yet. I haven't skipped anything. This is the way we do the program. And as we go through these 3 areas, it'll become a little bit more evident to you as to why we do that. So your sales pitch or the 10-second pitch really is the answer to that question, what's it about? Because for me, I know this from experience. When I wrote my first book, someone would be like, oh, wow, that's so cool. What's it about? And I'm like, vampires. I didn't have anywhere to go with it because I hadn't put the thought processes into what I was really doing and what it was really about. Now it's very different. So now somebody says, what's your book about? I've got a 10-second pitch for everything, be it fiction or non-fiction. So if you're doing non-fiction, your pitch is really going, or your 10-second pitch is really going to be, it's going to be about what the reader will learn. So for example, for right now, your business demands it. My pitch would simply be really cool. So it's the 7 steps to go from no idea to published author. We cover everything. That's it. What do they learn? They learn the 7 steps to go from no idea to published author. That's it. So it's very simplified, and it gets to the point. Now, if you're doing fiction, really what you want to do is summarize the plot, okay? And you keep it to 10 seconds. It can be less than 10 seconds. The shorter, the better. And it's really, again, it's that answer to what's your book about, okay? Keep these things in mind. Have fun with it. And I say that carefully. Be aware of your audience and deliver as you would to your audience. So here's the thing. The voice that you develop in your book should be authentic. It needs to be yours. So when you're reading my books, you can hear me coming through in it. I say stuff like amazeballs, right? I say yeah in there, yeah, question mark. There's I did live in Queensland for a while before anyone asks. And when you read my books, my personality and my voice comes through. The voice that I present to you guys in these trainings is the same. It's an authentic voice. So when I do my 10-second pitch, it's the same thing. Think about how different this would be compared to what I said before about my, right now. What if instead I said, right now provides you with the steps that you'll need to go from no idea to published author. And we do that through, I'll give you another example. Cupid's Guide, which is fiction. My audience is fun. It's dark comedy. So my audience has to be fun. It has a very high F count. So what is my pitch for that? Oh wow, you wrote a book. What's it about? Well, it's about this like pretty typical douchebag that is just happy sitting back, doing nothing and eating pizza. And then he wakes up one day and suddenly he's actually got this purpose and he finds out that he's Cupid. As opposed to Cupid's Guide is a discovery, a self-discovery by a young man who's currently experiencing quite a few issues in his Now, if your audience is corporate, obviously it's going to be different. But here's the thing, it all should align. Your voice should come through your book. Your voice should come through your pitch, because if that person that you're saying your 10-second pitch to isn't interested in buying your book, good, they're not your audience. If they're not interested in buying your book simply because you didn't present the same authentic flavor as your book, that's going to suck. What's also going to suck is if they like your pitch and then they go grab your book and realize it's not your voice, like it's not you. You'll be like, what the hell? So be authentic in your 10-second pitch, okay? And I know I've spent a little bit of time on that 10-second pitch, but it's actually super duper important, because the first time you get asked the question, what's your book about? And you go, duh, you'll realize how awesome it is just to have a little 10-second pitch. But here's the thing, you don't want it to be perfect, okay? You don't want it to be, fancy, and you don't want it to be perfect. What I mean by that is, don't fluff up the words, just say it how it is. Get down to basics, be straightforward with it. So for example, Giselle's book, How I Overcame the Fear of Driving, her 10-second pitch might have literally been, I used to be shit scared of driving, and now I'm not. Now I drive. So I wrote a book to help other people that are in the same situation. Done. Be really, really simplified about it. Don't try and make big words. Nobody likes to feel stupid, and so many people when they write a book think they've got to have this amazing vocabulary, which is one of those words I can't say, which is hilarious as a writer. So a lot of people think they've got to have all these big words, and they don't know enough. And no, simplify it. Be a human. People want to read from a human, particularly when you're talking nonfiction. When you go into fiction, then you've got to start getting a little bit more flowery with the word choice, but it still has to depend on your audience and your characters. For most of you that are writing nonfiction, just be you, be authentic, and talk to your audience, give them what they need, give them the message, and stop getting in your own way by thinking you need to be more than what you are, because you are enough and you're freaking epic. That. Okay. What else there was something else I wanted to mention about, yes. So the last thing I wanted to mention about the 10-second pitch is, once you've got the 10-second pitch, then beef it up to a 30-second pitch, and maybe beef it up to a 60-second pitch. Reason we say that is the 10-second pitch is the answer to what's your book about. When you start beefing that up a bit more to say a 30-second pitch, it can then become the blurb on the back of your book. And then when you get to a 60-second pitch, it's more something that you can actually present in a room, and you can start selling from stage, for example. And you can start pitching your book in other frameworks and in crowded spaces instead of just one-on-one. 10 seconds, very much a one-on-one elevator pitch. I trust that makes sense. So when you're beefing it up, though, don't beef it up for the sake of beefing it up. Still stay on point. Still be very straightforward and direct. And what you'll simply do is start bringing in personal experience, why you've written it, why someone would read it, what somebody would get from reading it. So you're just kind of giving it a little bit more power. But your 10-second pitch, that's your superpower right there. If you don't have them in the 10 seconds, they're not going to want to hear the rest anyway. Cool. All right, let's get on to pre-sales and sales. So the first thing, when I say pre-sales and sales, the first question is, what does this look like for you? And let me just pre-frame everything that we're doing here. The 7 steps of scrolls that I'm taking you through over these 10 days is applicable to any writing. Now, if I'm doing an article, I will map out these 7 steps in about 5 minutes. Okay, when I'm doing a book, I'll map out these 7 steps in maybe a few days to a few weeks, depending. If I'm doing the 90-day challenge, I'll map it out in the first week, and then I'll spend a lot of time on these first 3 steps up to where we are now. I'll spend maybe a week or 2 getting up to this point before I start writing. But I'll do a quick map out so I know what I'll be doing at each step. I trust that makes sense. And I'll give an example of that. So, for example, with my article, just say right now I was going to run through the steps. I'd go spine. Okay, so what's my message on 3 levels? Who's my audience? What's my intention? What's my benchmarks? Fantastic. How am I going to construct this? Okay, well, what's my working title, just so I can throw something on there? What are my, say, 3 points that I'm going to cover? Do my brain dump, obviously, get my 3 points. I'm ready to go. Okay, so then I hit marketing, which is red carpet, which is what we're doing today. And it's simply going to be, where am I going to put this? How am I getting it out there? So when it comes to an article, it's actually very brief. There's not as much detail required. When you're doing a book, then you go into it a lot further. This is what I mean by, what does sales and pre-sales mean to you with your project intention? So let me go into that a bit further. For my project intention, which is to write the main article for the Thought Collective magazine, which I have here with me this time, for me to do that, what I need to map out for sales and pre-sales, what that looks like for me is potentially pre-selling the 2nd edition of this, which I haven't started doing yet. And it is about it's actually about having the article in here, because here's the thing, my article, it's my magazine. I'm kind of guaranteed acceptance on my submission into the magazine. So that's not really what I'm going to be talking about. But for me, the sales and marketing is getting it in here and then selling this. So for me, sales and marketing is bigger than the article. It's actually about the magazine. I trust that makes sense. If it's a book, then your sales and marketing is about, you know, okay, I want to pre-sell 50 books so I can purchase 200 books to sell at the book launch. That literally might be what your sales, pre-sales and sales looks like. Okay, so think about that. For an article, it might literally look like just simply this. I'm going to get it into this particular magazine and they're going to pay me this much. It might not actually have anything to do with cash. Your sales and pre-sales could be literally, I'm going to post my article on LinkedIn, and then I'm going to share it on Facebook, and I'm going to share it on Twitter. That actually could be what your sales and pre-sales is all about. Your sales and pre-sales could simply be connections and engagement. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily mean cash. You need to actually put this in a concept of what your intention is for what you're creating, what you're writing, and what your mapping scores against right now for this program. I trust that makes sense. If not, please pop questions in. Now, don't have anyone live with me tonight. I'm feeling very lonely. If anyone is on live and it's not showing, please say hello so I know that you're there. So when you're recording, please come in and say hi, ask any questions, and rock forth. All right, so pre-sales, what else do we have? So we pre-sell before we commit to write, which is what I mentioned before, and there's a couple of reasons we do this. One's accountability and one's commitment. Now, something really funny's happened. I have no one on live tonight. And it's really, really funny that we go through the mindset stuff and then we hit construct, and I see this in the 90-day challenge. Then we have this quiet moment because we have people going through the mindset stuff going, yeah, this is awesome. I know my audience. Yeah, I've got this nailed. We go through beliefs. They're like, yeah, my beliefs are good. I've got this one, but it's all good. And then we hit construct, and suddenly all the beliefs start popping up. and overtaking. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And it's like, so doing that brain dump, it's like, I don't know what to do. And it's overthinking and not trusting intuition, and it gets in the way. Then we get to red carpet and marketing. This is what happens in the 90-day challenge. People get to this point and I tell them, hey, you're going to pre-sell the book. You have two groups of people at this point. You have one group that goes, okay. And you have another group that goes, This group that says, okay, they're still freaking out about it because their beliefs are still niggling, but they're trusting the system. They might not even trust themselves yet, but they're trusting the system. These guys, without fail, get their book done in the 90 days. So in the 90-day challenge, those that pre-post their book and start pre-selling their book, they get their book done in the 90 days. These guys over here that are allowing their beliefs, their crappy beliefs to take hold of them and are like, oh, I don't want to pre-sell because what if I don't do it? Right there, instantly, them giving themselves permission to not to. Do you think that they get their books done? Some do, most don't. So that's the two groups that you have. So I know in the 90-day challenge, when we get to red carpet, I know who's going to have their book done in 90 days and who's not. I know who I need to talk to more about mindset and who I need to work with and who's kind of got this now, who's, you know, worked on their mindset enough. That's exactly what happens at this point of the program. And it's interesting that I'm seeing it reflected in the fact that I've got no one on live with me, and I wonder if it is the exact same reflection. So when you do jump on and watch the recording, let me know. And if it's not, cool, rock on. Maybe just everyone's busy. It's totally, you know, totally possible. But let me know if it was for you. If it was one of those niggling beliefs, let me know, and let's squash that crap right now. Yeah, cool. So that's what this is all about. Gather evidence of you can, and you've got a very safe environment to do that right here. Cool. All right, so pre-sales, what else do we have? Yes, sell your brand, not your writing, is the other thing I want to say about sales and pre-sales. So many people think they need to sell their book, but realistically, you're selling your brand. And this is even if you're a career writer. So if you're a fiction writer, I mentioned yesterday about the Stephen King incident. He wasn't selling books, he was selling his brand. And J.K. Rowling had the exact same experience. And so she was selling her brand. She tried to sell a book outside of her brand, didn't really go too well. People found out it was hers, suddenly a whole bunch of sales because it was her brand that's actually selling. So keep that in mind. You're selling your brand, not the product as such. Now, when you're a career writer, the first book that someone buys, perhaps they're buying the book, but after that, they're buying your brand. So some of my favorite writers all started with, I got one of their books. I was like, I read it and went, okay, sounds kind of cool. So I read their book. After that, I was buying their brand. Dean Koontz, any book I see from his, I'm going to buy it. But I'm not buying the book, I'm buying the brand. Hi, Rachel. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you could join me tonight. Okay, so sell your brand, not the book. Really, really important. Now, in regard to if it's your project intention, for example, is an article like mine is, you're still selling the brand. So put your branding on there. Don't give away anything that you do by, what I mean by that is, don't just say you did an article on LinkedIn, okay? Don't just do a random article that has nothing connected back to your brand. Build your brand. Use it to build your brand. This is the whole idea, particularly in nonfiction, of writing, is to build your brand. So in business, you either have branding or you have marketing. If you have enough branding, you've got sales. You don't need to market. But if your brand is not yet huge, like mine is, I'm working on my branding right now. This is what I'm doing. So if your branding is not yet, bring in all the sales to like completely float your business, then you need to market to create the branding. Your book is part of your marketing for your brand. Trust that makes sense. All right. What else did I have in sales and pre-sales I wanted to cover? Right. Authors of brands. Yes, well, I've already mentioned that. I mentioned that even if you're a career writer, you're still selling the brand. The thing is, if you're a career writer, so if you're a writer and that's what you're doing, and this is ultimately the goal of where I want to be, then you are selling yourself as a writer. You are the business. You are the brand. So right now I have the brand of I Am Academy, but I'm also building the brand of Carrie McTaggart. How am I doing that? Carrie McTaggart. Carrie McTaggart. So I'm building my brand of Carrie McTaggart as a writer while I'm also building the brand of I Am Academy. So you can have more than one brand, but just saying, the point is you're selling the brand, not the book. Selling the brand, selling the brand. Look at this, I've got I Am Academy up here. Also on my books, my publication house, I Am Publications. This is why it's so important, and we'll go into this when we hit loud and proud. It's so important when you publish to know how to do it yourself instead of paying someone else to do it, so that you can keep all of your branding. So important. We'll go over all of that, save you a buckload of money. Hey Kerry, you're on. I was wondering where you were. I was getting really lonely, guys. So yeah, selling your branding, selling yourself, not the actual. So the product is just, think of it like a business. The book is a product, okay? Even if you're a fiction writer, it's an awesome product, really awesome product, but it's still a product. And the last thing I want to cover is cover design. Now, cover design, there's three components to your cover design. You've got your front cover, you've got your spine, and you've got your back cover. And the reason we're going over this now is because the cover has so much to do with the marketing. Because I say don't judge a book by its cover, but seriously, what's the first thing you do? You look at the book and you judge its cover. That's okay. It's okay. So here's a couple of things to be aware of when designing your cover, or at least designing a mock-up for your cover. So if you're using a professional cover designer, you want to design a mock-up of your cover to provide to them so they've got something to work on. So things to consider. Number one, what a surprise. Consider your audience. And you might remember I was saying about when we were talking about, I can't remember if it was day one or day two now. I think it was day one because we were talking about audience. And I was saying about how I picture that person, that one person whose world is going to change with that book, and I picture them in space, whether it be the library or the bookstore, and I picture them reaching out and getting the book. So the other thing I do is I take note of the book that they're grabbing. So I might or might not have an idea of what the book's going to look like, but I'm thinking about what is attracting them. Are they attracted by a particular color? Are they attracted by a particular word? What is it that is making them reach out their hand to get that? And remember this too, so many people tend to spend so much time on the front cover and forget that the first thing people see is usually the spine, not the front cover. So you really have to be aware of the spine. So for example, so front cover, spine. So the spine, I'll have the same font as I have on the cover. Same font, same color, and I've got my logo down there, again, branding. Okay, so be very aware of your spine. Now, when considering your audience as well, think about their buying strategy. Kerry, my internet going slower than yeah, cool, rock on, Kerry. I had that last night. Actually, my internet dropped out for about 4 hours. I was freaking out. What am I going to do? So think about your readers' buying strategy, and I'll go into it a little bit more. But first thing to consider in regard to buying strategy is you'll usually attract people to you that have a very similar buying strategy to what you do. So if you don't know what your audience's buying strategy is, just elicit your own buying strategy. And what I mean by that is, if you need to, go to a bookstore and actually notice what you do. What's the first thing you do? So for me, my buying strategy is when I go into, say, a bookstore, is I start scanning the titles. I'm not visual, I'm very audio. So I'm scanning the titles and I'm literally in my mind saying the words. I'm saying the names of the titles. And then I stop on one that gets my attention. Then I look at it and I pull it out, and then I look at the front cover for the visual. So I'm hearing the actual title. That's the first thing, and this is why title is so important. This is also why I'm currently doing a 19-part course on book titles, so that I can provide that even more in the Right Now program as well. But I'm listening for the book title. So for me, book title is very important when I produce my books. The next thing I'm doing is I'm visually looking at the front. Is it visually appealing? And then I'm turning it over and I'm reading it to see how it feels. So for me, my buying strategy is I hear it, then I see it, and then I feel it. And if those all get a tick, if it sounds good, if it looks good, and if it feels good, I'm buying it. So for me, a lot of my readers have that same buying strategy, particularly if they are a writer themselves. Non-fiction, a lot of the non-fiction people that come to me have a slightly different buying strategy. So my fiction and my non-fiction are a little bit different based on that. So pretty cool, and not something we usually think about, yeah? But have a think about it, and if you need to, like I said, go to a bookstore and actually see what you do. Also, I wanted to mention, don't use typical fonts. This is a huge no-no. This is a massive piece of gold I'm giving you right now. On a book cover, I'm talking specifically about cover design right now, so articles and whatnot, not as relevant, but can still be relevant in regard to the font that you use, that you choose to use. You still need to choose a font that's relevant to your audience. Fonts have different feels. Sans serif and serif, whether they've got the little lines on them or not, have different feels. Again, something that most of us don't even consider. On your cover design, I highly recommend you get a typographer to help you with your font. They're not expensive, but if you can't do that, that's okay, because, well, if you're in the Right Now program, we go over it and I help you out with it anyway, so there's training available for you. So anyone in the Right Now program, don't worry, you're taken care of. And the last thing I wanted to mention, which I kind of mentioned before, is to use your pitch on the back of your book as your blurb. So the back of your book should have a blurb, and preferably reviews. Really awesome if you can get someone to read your book prior and write the reviews on there. Now, if you're doing an article, it's really cool to have maybe a one-line review of something else, or maybe a link to another article that you've done with the review, and some kind of authoritative testimonial in that regard as well. So that's the 3 areas I want to cover: 10-second pitch, pre-sales and sales, and cover design. The bonus is the video that I've done, a training video I did last year, which is how to create a cover design using Canva. I've popped the link already in there for you, so you can go and check that out anytime. It goes for about half an hour, so that's a full bonus for you. And it was done a year ago, so there's a couple of things in there that I probably would be able to do better now, but rock on. You know, through how to do a whole a cover using it and how to play around with it. It's a lot of fun. Kerry, Canva is exactly how I created the cover that I did for you. So yeah, just so you know. So yeah, go and play in that. And lastly, the task for you guys today is to share your 10-second pitch. So in the comments below, I want you to put in there your 10-second pitch. Now remember, if you haven't already done all the tasks up to this point, please go back, watch the trainings first, do the accountabilities for each day in order, because tomorrow we get into action. This is where it becomes so important that you've done the steps in order. If you've done that, tomorrow is going to be a breeze. If not, tomorrow might be a little confusing. So if you haven't, make sure you go and do that before you watch tomorrow's. And for everyone watching on the recording, please pop your questions in. Rachel, Kerry, thank you so much for joining me, and we will pick this up tomorrow night. So until then, rock forth with awesomeness.